Hey guys, it's Gsluke back again for another PGA DFS video. In this breakdown, we're going to be going over some of the ownership percentages for this year's Palmetto Championship and identifying some of our fades and sleeper picks for the DFS contest this weekend. First of all, if you're new to the channel, I just want to welcome you. I'm Gsluke, a data-based sports analyst that uses analytics to take on fantasy sports. I cover the PGA Tour, NBA, NFL, UFC, and even DFS strategy in general. I have videos up right now on the PGA Tour event from this week, also the UFC 263 card this weekend, and many more on my channel for you guys to check out. So if you're looking for that full DFS breakdown for the Palmetto Championship, the link will be in the description for you. But with all that being said, let's hop right into the fades and sleeper picks for this year's 2021 Palmetto Championship. Hopping into our fades for this week. At number 3, we have Rafa Cabrera Bello, a $7,800 golfer who's expected to be owned over 15% in GPPs this weekend. So first of all, RCB comes into Wednesday, the highest owned player in the 7K range, which for me doesn't make much sense at all. He's obviously rattled off a few okay starts of late. He's made the cut in his last 3 starts. I think that's where a lot of this steam is coming from. But his best finish was just a T21, which is far from impressive, to be honest with you. On top of not taking advantage of those made cuts, those last 3 times out, RCB has carried himself with this putter. He's gained 6, even 7 strokes 3 starts ago with the putter. And that's not something that you can realistically expect to show up every single week. I do expect that to come down to earth, kind of like I was mentioning right there. And if he's not putting up those vicious stats with the putter, he's going to miss the cut. He's somebody who has been losing strokes on approach over the last 3 weeks, and that's just not going to get it done week to week. And with all that being said, at 15% ownership, he's just an easy fade for me. My number 2 fade this week is somebody I was actually pretty high on last week, but that is going to be Lucas Glover, an $8,600 golfer with an expected ownership of over 20%, which is a pretty jarring number, to be honest. If we look at Lucas Glover, he's obviously been striping the ball of late, and that's really why I've been so high on him. He's out there, gaining off the tee, gaining on approach. He's always been pretty solid around the green, near neutral. But the real problem with Glover has been the putter. He has not had it cooperate very often. We saw it cooperate at the Valero Texas Open. We also saw it cooperate at the Byron Nelson. He did end up getting 2 top 15 finishes there, but those are rare for Lucas Glover. If we take a look at his season as a whole, he's only gaining in 12% of his rounds. That's not very good. That's something that we're used to seeing from Lucas Glover, and that was really apparent last week. He was top 3 in shots gained tee to green in the field, which is excellent. We love to see that, but for him to only manage a tied for 37th is ridiculous. That just shows how bad his short game was. And at a course like Congaree this week, where you're going to have a relatively high score winning, you're going to absolutely have to save yourself around the green. I just don't like the course fit this week. I definitely don't like that the putter's been super cold, and at 20%, that's just a jarring number. You're expecting the guy to be a relatively safe play, and Lucas Glover is far from being a safe play this week. And now for my number 1 fade, we have Harris English, a $9,900 golfer with an expected ownership of 14%. Harris comes in as my number 1 fade this week, and it has a lot to do with his talent level rather than that expected ownership number. If we take a look at his season as a whole, Harris English is in the top half of players in this field. He's actually in the top 15 of players in this field. But a lot of that is, factoring in his early season stats, even his late 2020 stats. And if we take a look at his form of late, he just doesn't really look like the same player. So last year, if we take a look at his shots gained, he was number 3 on the whole PGA Tour in terms of shots gained. He was absolutely pouring everything in, gaining all over in all 4 statistical categories. But if we take a look at the last 4 months, he's in the lower half of this weak field. He's actually losing strokes over his last 4 months. His best finish over that span was a T13 at the Byron Nelson. And we know about the Byron Nelson. It was an extremely weak field. A lot of, no-name people, popped at the Byron Nelson. So I'm not really looking into that too much. And if we take a look at $9,900, 14% ownership, it's almost as if the public is treating him like we were last year, like he was one of the best players in the field, somebody that was safe. And, I'm not letting one good performance just flip the switch on Harris English. He's been horrible for the last 4 months. And perhaps most glaring of all is that $9,900 price tag. I mean, he's almost priced in the 10K range. He's priced around guys that are elite level golfers, people with legit win equity this weekend. And Harris English doesn't fit any of those for me. So that he's a big fade, even at only 14% ownership. I would much rather invest in other golfers in that 9K range. And we'll get to one of them here in my sleepers here in 1 second. Now for this week's sleeper picks. At number 3, we have Chez Reavie, a $6,800 golfer with just an expected ownership of 1.5%. So while recent form with Reavie paints a very scary picture, he had a recent good run at the US Open qualifier in which he qualified for the US Open with a really solid round. Before that qualifier, he had missed 5 straight cuts in 5 straight events, which is why I said we had a scary picture of Reavie. But when we compare that to a lot of the other golfers in the 6K range, that's what you're pretty much getting with all the golfers. Reavie, though, we do have a player that has really good historical form. I mean, last year he was gaining off the tee, on approach, also gaining around the green. He's obviously always been bad with the putter. That's actually what's been sinking him of late. He's been an atrocious putter of late. But, he's been very on brand for his career. So last season, like I said, he was doing very well. And it's as if, 2021's kind of just not been his year. He's been losing a lot of strokes with the putter. He hasn't been as good off the tee. But again, that recent run at the US Open qualifier does give me a lot of hope. We haven't seen a lot of hope when he's been playing on tour. But again, at 1.5% ownership, he's priced around guys that aren't even actual PGA Tour players. So I absolutely like the potential for him to bounce back, kind of like Kevin Kisner did last week. I mean, with Kevin Kisner, we saw a similar run of bad form, 4 or 5. I believe it was also 5 straight missed cuts. He returned, made a cut, was in the top 20 for a while. And if Chez Reavie can go out, finish with a top 20 finish, that's great for somebody at $6,800. So I'm definitely taking a few shots on him this week. Again, you only have to take a couple with that 1.5% ownership. But that's why he is my number 3 sleeper. For our number 2 sleeper, we have Redman, an $8,000 golfer expected to be owned 5.5%. So with Redman, we have a guy who was not playing well at the beginning of 2021. He had missed 5 straight cuts at one point, just like Chez Reavie. But of recent, we've seen a resurgence from Redman. He comes in making 7 of his last 9 cuts, but also with 2 top 17 finishes as well, in some pretty strong fields. His stats have started to rebound as well. We've seen him start to gain significantly off the tee and on approach, just like he was last year. The biggest reason to play Redman this week is also how he's done in fields with the similar weak field strength. We think the Rocket Mortgage from 2 years ago, he finished second. He did well in last year's Rocket Mortgage, has done well at Corrales, the Puerto Rico Open. Pretty much any time the top golfers in the world don't show up to an event, I believe that Redman sees himself a little bit better, a little bit more confidence. I think he actually thinks he can win a golf tournament. So I definitely like his potential this week. He obviously doesn't have a PGA Tour win to his name, but if he's going to take down a PGA Tour event, especially for the first time, I think it's at an event like this where you have a weak field, only a few top-end options, and I think he's just a great spot to get some leverage in that 8K range. Again, he's only being owned 5.5% of the time. It's relatively easy to get over the field, and I will definitely be doing so this weekend in my GPPs. And finally, my number 1 sleeper pick is going to be Sungjae Im, coming in at $9,700 and an expected ownership of 12%. So my number 1 sleeper this week is a great pivot off of Harris English, kind of like I was mentioning before. With Sungjae Im, we get an extremely volatile golfer, somebody that's either been making cuts or finishing in the top 20 for the last 2 months now, and that's really going to scare a lot of people off of him. We can see that with the expected ownership. Only 12% of people seem willing to actually use Sungjae Im, and this golf course really sets up well for him. He's somebody who's not a bomber off the tee. He's very accurate. He still gets the ball out there good ways, though, and from what we're hearing at Congaree is that the fairways are very, very, very firm. They're very dried out. The ball rolls out, 50, 60 yards on your drives. So Sungjae Im is going to get a lot of extra distance. He's somebody, like I said, who doesn't miss many fairways. He's going to be getting that extra rollout pretty much on every single hole. And he's somebody with a great short game, an elite short game, maybe even a prolific, world-beating short game. And again, if he's able to gain that distance off the tee, he's able to rely on that short game, I think you're, able to take advantage of that volatility, and I think it's a great thing to target this week. We're dealing with a relatively weak field. Anyone can go out and win, and somebody that's so hit or miss like Sungjae is exactly what you're looking for. He could go out, easily win by 5 strokes. He could just as easily go out and miss the cut. But at 12% ownership, he's a sleeper because it doesn't take much to get over the field. We can still put up 30, 35% on Sungjae this week and still have room to invest on the other studs. So he's a great pick for me. He's definitely a part of my player pool, and that's why he is my number 1 sleeper. That's all I've got, guys, for my fades and sleepers. Let me know in the comments who your biggest fade or your biggest sleeper is for this year's Palmetto Championship. And if you guys enjoyed, please make sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe to see my videos in the future. It really helps me out a lot when I'm trying to grow my channel, and it also makes sure you guys can see my videos as soon as I post them going into the future. So good luck with your DFS lineups this weekend, guys, and I'll see you guys next week.